All right, you ready? Yeah. We'll switch up the agenda accordingly.
Yes, well.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the SLO County Flood Control and Water Conservation District Water Resources Advisory Committee, RAC, for today, Wednesday, December 6th, 2023. Thank you all for being here. And as the roll has gone on, we've established that we do have quorum. So we're going to go ahead and jump in, and then we with introductions and welcome. And let's see. So I will start. I'm Andy Pease, and I'm with the San Luis Obispo City Council. I'm the chair.
Tom Burhan, 4th District and Vice Chair.
Christine Mulholland, Environmental at Large.
Steve Sinton, Shannon, San Juan Water District.
David Chipping, Environmental at Large.
Eric Greening, Environmental at Large.
Good evening, Oklahoma City SD. Dominic Rock, alternate to our city.
David Chipping, Coastal Center. Amy Henderson, Experimental Water Company. Lewis Howard, Environmental at Large, alternate. Rural City of Morro Bay City Council.
Lee Nesbitt, UPC.
Deborah Logan, Templeton CSD.
Kelly Dodds, San Miguel CSD.
Gregory Wall, SLO Cattlemen's Association.
Melvin Duckwood, District 5.
Jason Yeager, Lauren Pascal.
Kelly Corner, City of
Steve Carter, SLO County Farm Bureau.
Introduction.
Oh, I'm Mary Van Ryn.
Thank you.
John Winstead, Ag at Large. Scott Duffield, Heritage Ranch Community Services District.
Jim Style, County Public Works. Brendan Clark, County Public Works.
Awesome, great. And I'll go ahead and call names for our folks online. If you want to unmute and say hi, you're welcome to. Let's see, Willie.
Yeah, Willie Cunha from the Shandon San Juan and Shandon Farmer. Good afternoon.
Hello, Jenny.
Jenny Williamson, County Public Works.
Thank you. W. Greco. Who's W. Greco?
Warren Greco, Corollo Engineers.
Thank you. Andy Baldwin.
Yes, Andy here from Corollo Engineers, working for Brendan.
Thank you. Courtney.
Hello, Courtney Howard, Water Resource Division, Public Works.
Thank you. And E. Garvey.
Elisa Garvey from Corollo Engineers.
Great. Thank you. And we're just doing introductions.
Yeah, Stacy Inman, Pismo Beach.
Thank you, Stacy. All right, did we catch everyone? All right, welcome, welcome. Thank you. Next item is the meeting minutes from November 1st. Any comments or changes to those meeting minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Christine, a second.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. And this can voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great, thanks. So unfortunately, we had lots of confirmations from John Lindsay of being here, and he's not here right now. So we're going to change up the order and do the presentation on the master water report update. And hopefully John will be able to join. Also a heads up that I need to leave a little early today. So Tom will finish, he'll step in to chair the remainder of the meeting. All right, you ready?
Yeah, it's all right with everyone. I'll present from right here because I'm going to switch. We're going to have a Corollo presenting part, and I'm going to be here for that. So hopefully that's okay.
Great.
Should be a quick, fairly quick here. Okay. Share screen. Thank you.
And then is your camera on? If you want your camera
can do
on
that,
so that
yes.
folks can see you.
All right. Well, today, another Master Water Report update presentation. And going to be fairly quick on my side. I've spoken a few times about this project and the update we're doing today. And so real quickly, going to go through just one slide reintroduction to the project. I'm not going to go through the same thing every time. So if you're interested in a longer presentation about what the project is, I'd be glad to talk to you after, or so we could set up another conversation, or I've got past presentations as well. We're going to talk a little bit about what a prototype version is and what it isn't. We have Andy Baldwin, our DIMS development lead from Carollo, will be presenting kind of the meat of this item today. And then I'll come back with some next steps, and we'll do some questions. So real quick, what are we trying to do here with this project? Is we are taking the Master Water Report, which has traditionally been a paper point in time report out of supply and demand, a number of water resources related items for the county, and we're turning it into a digital system. And so what we've got here, there's kind of 4 things going on. You have all our input data, and this data is changing, and over time it gets updated. We have our largest cities and our purveyors every 5 years are working on urban water management plans and forecasts, and things change, population changes. We have recycled water here listed, that changes. And we know that demands change as well. Land use is changing. And so these point in time reports, we're moving away from that, and we're trying to build a system that will allow us to adjust as these inputs, as the raw data changes, we're able to adjust to that. And there's kind of 2 different systems, if you will, that we're talking about developing. And one is the DIMS here. This is the Data and Information Management System. This is all of that raw data being aggregated, being sorted, being grouped, being analyzed. That's the database that's in the background a little bit. And then the digital Master Water Report is how we're going to view that data. How are we taking in these raw inputs, and how are we displaying them? How are we reporting them out? And how are we using them for future decisions, related to all sorts of water supply and demand issues? How, we can now go give that to the planning department. Here's your data for you to go do your planning, and so on and so forth, informing our recommendations as staff to the Board of Supervisors. That data and analysis is the foundation. It's step 1, understand conditions. We need to do that before we can set goals, before we can define solutions, and before we can implement. So that's what we're doing here with the project. And where we're at right now is we're in the prototype version. So in, I think it was June, I came and talked a bit about the prototype version, shared some screenshots, nothing was working. But that's okay.
By
That's
design.
the start. Again, so we're at the prototype. That's the start. We've been using this analogy as a project team. Proof of concept is the plans. It's the foundation. You can't see the structure yet. It's not, but it's kind of laid out. We're here at the prototype. The frame is being set. You can start to see how this is going to look. And then obviously it only gets built out more from there. So what are we going to see today? The main point of this prototype version is functionality. And you'll see interface, navigation, being able to get to data in a few different ways, from maps at different geographical scales, going in, starting with communities, starting with users, starting with sources, and being able to view and see the data again, from different angles in different ways and start to see the functionality. This is not a draft report, so I really want to highlight that. Again, this prototype is about functionality, and analysis and reporting comes next. So I showed this kind of roadmap here. The development version, we will see some of that analysis and reporting come. So to put it bluntly, I'm not going to answer questions about the numbers on the screen. That's the most plain way I can put it. But the idea here is the functionality of the tools and of the system. And I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Andy. So Andy, it'll take me just a second here to get you on the screen, but I will, I'm going to stop sharing. Joey, you can give Andy sharing capability, and I'll turn it over to Andy.
Fantastic, Brendan. Yeah, let me just get my screen set up here. So give me a second. And team, I'm not going to have my camera on. I'm just actually recovering from shingles, and my face is not the most prettiest sight in the world. So anyway, you just need to focus on the application and not me. So I hope that's okay, everybody. Okay. So I am sharing my main screen, and hopefully you can all see it. Okay. Okay. Right, so I just want to give everybody just a 10-minute overview of DIMS. I don't want to dive in too deep and go too technical, but this application is a GIS-based application. So a lot of the data that we're talking about has a spatial element to it. So the application starts off with this kind of map view here. This is still prototype, so a lot of the colors and the layers that you're going to see on the maps will change, and the functions obviously will change as well. But basically, this is the structure of the application, the DIMS application. So usual kind of standard GIS features here, where you can start to see what layers we have. And right now we're tracking things, we're tracking your water planning areas, of watersheds and communities, and then also groundwater and all these other layers. And you can, as a user, you'll be able to kind of switch these on and off and dive a bit deeper into some of these features on the screen. So for example, you can just click on what we would call a water user. And a water user is a collection of entities, organizations, or specific areas that are serving water, basically, simple as that. And that's why we have these areas, so we can start to track supply and demand around these, what we would define as water users. So here's an example of one. You can see when I click on the item on the screen, you've got a panel on the left that starts to provide a bit more detail. Again, a lot of this information will be expanded as we go into the full development version, but it's very much a kind of point and click application right now. Now, if you want to dive a bit deeper and start to look at this information through a series of lists, if you like, you can go to what we see here as the main menu. And the main menu at the top starts off with, giving you a chance to look at the watersheds, look at communities that we've got into the system, look at water users that I've just mentioned, and we can just start to drill into this. So I'm going to click on the watersheds, and this is a fairly mundane list of watersheds. It's just another way for the users to go and find what they're interested in. So here we can pick Morro Bay, for example. If we don't know where this is on the map, we can press the big pink button that says map, and it goes and highlights this watershed area. Okay, so this is another geographical feature that we're tracking. Okay, now when we track these features, what we're really doing as part of the master plan is really evaluating the supply and demands. That's what it boils down to. And the DIMS sits on a large database that has a lot of that information behind the scenes. So the front end that we see here is a way of actually accessing this information. And we do that through a series of reports. And a report is typically a combination of graphics and tables that bring this information into an easy to use front end. So for example, here we have a series of what we call fix reports. And I can just simply click on one of these, and it will then go away. And this is a live demo, by the way. So it's actually going away to the data repository, which is ArcGIS Online, and it takes a few seconds and brings back the information. And here, for example, we've got a couple of pie charts, nothing too exciting here, but we see the supply pie chart over here, and this is all relevant to the watershed that we're looking at here, Morro Bay. And you can see it's broken down into groundwater, imported water, and surface water. And over here on the right, we have demand. And this is broken down into different demand types like agricultural, environmental, rural, and urban, you see. So this is just an example of a simple report and very much a point and click way of getting to the reports. Now, we recognize that as we evolve this application, there's going to be a truckload of different reports that are going to be geared towards, you know, serving up this master planning information. So to manage those reports, we've got what we call a report manager, which allows the user to pick and choose basically what they want to see. I'm not trying to train everybody up here, but I'm trying to give you a flavor on the flexibility of the application. So here we have really just one big filter, which allows the user to firstly select the water planning area. So I'm going to just kick this off by selecting the Morro Bay planning area. We don't have all the data in the system right now, so I can't pick and choose anything out of the box here. But we can start off with this, and then as we pick these tracks, these spatial tracks, the other options like the watershed and the communities are filtered. So now the system knows what available watersheds are part of that water planning area, and we can then go and pick one. And here's a list of them, and we'll pick Morro Bay. And then we can go down, we can pick a community, we can actually pick an individual water user. Then we can start to pick these hydrological conditions. What are we looking at? The average, the max, and that kind of thing. Then we can also pick the planning year. And this becomes very important, not just for looking at today's flows, but also looking at projections. And as you can see right now, we've got a few years that we're programmed into the system that will allow us to look at the supply and demands projections over these different planning periods. Right now, I'm just going to pick 2020, which we call existing. And then right at the bottom down here, we can decide what we want to look at. You know, what report do we want? And this is just an example list. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just what we have in the system so far. Let's pick the one here, which is called supply and demand summary. It's more of a detailed view of supply and demand. And we just press apply. And it takes a few seconds to go and get the data, live data, process the data, do all the calculations, and then come back and render it on the screen. And it starts off with a chart down here. So we've got a fairly simple bar chart. The different colors represent supply and demand, and also deficit if we have one. And what we often see here is some of these items like agricultural and environmental dominate the actual chart itself. So we have a way of kind of filtering. The user can filter what they want to see. So here I've expanded that report by looking at the tabular data, as you can see down here. And I've got an option here where the user, if they really just want to tweak this, they can switch these, they can customize the chart by deselecting some of these items. So let's just take off the ag and take off the environmental flows and demands, and then we can refresh the report and you can get a better view. So this is just an example of how the user will interact with this information. We're not just generating what we call static reports and that's it. That's all you're going to get. We want the user to interact, to pick and choose what they want to see, to drill down what they want to see, and be very interactive and dynamic. And that's the essence behind this application. So you can also note, and I mentioned drill down, you can start to see that this table is also partially interactive as well. And it really is a list of water users. So you may be wondering, well, what is this water user? Where are they? Tell me more about it. And you just pick and drill down. So here, let's pick the Los Osos Community Service. And it would just show a panel over here on the left. And you can then decide what you want to do at this point. And at this point, there'll be more reports that we're going to add into the system, and you're going to be able to drill down and find out more information. So what else do we have in the system to date? If I go back to the report manager and just show you a couple of other example reports, let's see what we can do here. So we'll go through the process. We'll pick the filter. Let's pick the same watershed here. And then let's go down and pick another report. So here we've got other items. We've got risk analysis. We've got environmental demand summary. Let's pick the risk one and see what that pops up. And we press apply. Again, it's doing the live calculations on the fly. So it does take a couple of seconds to come back. And now we have a different report, again, it's a graphic, it's a bar chart, but now it's showing risk score. And we can see the actual numbers in a bit more detail in this table below. And this risk analysis is coming in from a different data source, by the way. It's also relevant to what we call systems. And here is a list of the systems that are coming in from the reports. And some of these systems do relate to what we would call a water user, like county operations. So there are connections between all these different data entities. But you can see the system name, you can see the label, which is referenced on the chart. And the scoring is graded here. It's color-coded, if you like, where you've got the green bar, which is a low risk, and then you've got the orange, which is medium risk, and then we've got the red, which is high risk. And this is very useful to kind of identify what systems you probably should be worrying about, kind of thing, in terms of risk. So this is just another way of viewing the data. Now, what else do we have? So if we go back to the main menu, in fact, let me just do another example here. I just want to show you the environmental report. Press apply on this one. And I'm whizzing through this just to give you a real taste on what we've got. One thing you'll note down here is a button that's got a share symbol. One of the things that we are beginning to recognize, this application, is going to have a lot to it, and we want to make sure it's easy for the casual user to use. So we have the ability here to save a link, and you can then save this link and send it to somebody else. As long as that somebody else has login permissions to get into the DIMS application, they'll be able to simply click on that link and literally open up the report that I've got here right away. So the user will not have to navigate through the menus to find what they're interested in. So this is just a way of, if you like, helping people share this information, which is important. So let's go back to the main menu and just take a quick whiz on what else we've got here. We've gone through reports. You can see some of these other buttons lurking around here. We recognize that DIMS needs to be updated, so we will have the ability for certain users, not every user, but certain users that will be able to analyze and update the calculations behind the scenes. So that's another module. Then we have dashboarding, which is an area where we'd show the same kind of information, but through a series of KPIs, similar to like Power BI, that kind of thing. Dashboarding is like the rave right now. And then we also have a library. Now, a library is a way of sorting out and organizing data about data, if you like. So we recognize there's a load of different data sources that come to make up this supply and demand analysis. And it's important to make sure those data sources are known about and they're updated. And life starts by organizing those data sources, and we call that metadata. And this library, this data library, will help you do that. So here we have an example list of data sources that we're already starting to use to do the analysis. So for example, we've got urban water management plans, and we can click on here. And this is just a bit about those urban water management plans. It just allows the user to see what information we've used. And if possible, go and find it, go and see it, go and look at the raw data. And here it actually comes in as an Excel format or a PDF. And we can actually open that. If it's a live web link, we can open that and we can go and see that information directly. So we're trying to link this information together to enable the user to easily navigate to these different data sources. And that's what the DIMS is really all about. It's a big data management system that brings data together. And that's about it, really. Just going back to the main menu and just kind of wrap this up. We've got a few other features that are going to be coming here. If the user wants to be able to do their own analysis, throw the data in a spreadsheet, for example, we will have the ability to extract or to export data. And so we don't want this to be one big black hole where you can't access the data. We want this to be very, very transparent indeed. But that's the general gist of where we are with the DIMS application.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have a couple, just a brief follow up, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you. All right, let me get this back up here.
Do you want to stop sharing, Brendan?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
And Andy, stick around here. I'm just going to go through
no problem. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
All right, so just gonna do 2 quick slides and then we'll open it up for questions. We have what's coming up next. We are going to be rolling right into the development version, which I'll explain here in just a second. And that is a grant deliverable. We did receive a planning grant from the state, and having a development version working with reporting is deliverable for that. And I will say I didn't make this a big deal before Andy started, but we're focusing on water planning area too. And so building that functionality, the reporting, the analysis that will expand to the rest of the county. But we're starting with the Morro Bay watershed from Cayucas to Los Osos, Chorro Valley and the city of Morro Bay. That is our phase 1 for this process here. And then we will then in the summer, next summer, once that grant deliverable is complete, we will expand to the rest of the county. We do not need to go back to the board for that. The board did authorize phase 1 and 2 when we went to them and got the project going. So all right, what we're going to be working on next are the outputs and reports. Again, this was functionality. Now we're going to be moving in and talking about what kind of analysis are we doing? What are those reporting tools going to look like? We're going to be getting supply projects in there. So like many of us know, a lot of agencies are working on projects that are going to expand supply or alter supply or change things. And we want to be able to have those in the system so people know that they're going on and we can see the effect. Okay, if this project is going to be online in 2030 and add 300 acre feet of new supply, it should be in the system and be able to be viewed that way. And then looking at expanding some of our basin reports. There are things that we're having ongoing discussions about, like agricultural and environmental demand, how we're going to do time increments and hydrologic conditions, being a normal year and a dry year and a multi-dry kind of years conditions. So those are some state terms, and so we're working out how we're going to incorporate and report out. So won't have any specifics on those topics, but those are things we're working on. And then now with that, I'll go ahead and we're going to answer some questions, and I'll field the questions, and Carollo, I'll kick it over to you. I want you to answer. So, David.
Yeah, I haven't seen the word groundwater in any of this. And if you're doing basin management, presumably you need the same sort of thing the SGMA study would require. For example, if I was in the Pomo Mesa, I'd be looking at the Key Wells Index, for example, as an indicator of conditions. Or if I was in Los Osos, I would want to know where the sodium was in the lower aquifer. I mean, there are various critical things in terms of managing basins that seem to be missing here. And I'm wondering how you get a realistic view of what a basin is doing, which it seems to be, that doesn't leave out all of the groundwater constraints that might be there.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Those we are going for supply and demand, not any specific wells or things like that. I think there are specific requirements for SGMA basins for reporting and data collection and management and things, and that could be built on, say, or an addendum to. This is all, like Andy was saying, this is open. We're not in a black box here. This eventually will be hosted by the county here and managed by our staff. And so if groundwater sustainability department wanted to use it as the basis for the specific things they need to do in the basins, they could do that. As far as groundwater conditions, right now, I don't see us tracking the salt levels of specific basins in this. Will there be a way to get to that? Here's where you can learn more about, okay, here's the supply see, here's the demand and the future demands off of the Los Osos Basin based on the reports that are out there. You know, for more detailed info on the conditions of the basin, go check out. You know, I could see us doing something like that. But I'd say it's not a no, it's not, but I would not in the plan right now for those specific, very, very basin specific things. When we're looking at the county-wide picture of how much water do we have, how much do we use, and where is it going in the future? Yeah, that's what I got. Great question. Great.
And you brought up the urban water management plans. Just going to fact check that the information in those plans is correct and answers all the questions, because I was at Templeton CSD last night and they just doing their first plan because they have 3,000 hookups. And there's a lot of information that's missing that I brought up in that plan. And if a lot of this stuff is based off CASGEM and what your reliance is on certain things, regardless of what area you're in, whether it's groundwater, surface water, or whatever. And just as an example, people that live in certain communities, the Atascadero, Templeton, Paso Robles, that turn on their tap, don't understand that their water is coming out of a well or is coming from the Salinas River. Just because they don't own the private well, it's still coming, it's either being re-injected through Nacimiento and stuff like that. And one of the things I brought up last night is the fact that there's been 3 repairs on the Nacimiento pipeline. And it is lacking the capability of almost 4,000 acre feet of capacity that could be produced. But those repairs haven't been completed yet. In the reports, it says by a certain date, they're going to use 100%. Well, I want to know how that can happen in a report when it's not fixed. So I want the accuracy of a report where somebody can push a button and look at something that it's not just a story that somebody put in a report that really isn't going to come to fruition.
Comment noted. Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, I'm a little, I had the same question basically that David did. I'm a little discouraged by your answer because we're going to be spending hundreds of thousands and maybe millions of dollars on the same kind of reports for all these GSAs around the county. And it seems to me this is the golden opportunity to put it all in one place, do it together. I know there's some grant money out there for doing some GSA work on this, but I don't understand why we wouldn't be integrating these together. I realize that makes the task bigger, but we also have multiple revenue sources, so it doesn't have to come just from one grant. And it seems like we ought to be really trying to accomplish all of our demands on all of our agencies in one place, so that there's not, somebody doesn't have to go to the Paso Basin for one thing and the Osos Basin for another, and then the county has a third place. Really ought to be integrated, in my view.
Yeah, we've been working very closely with Blaine, really the groundwater sustainability director, in developing this project to, the question kind of being, is this what, you need to help do your specific things? As far as one grand system that does what we need to do for staff to do our planning and project development and our goal setting and solution, defining solutions, and doing state specific reporting. That's like, I'm not saying no, but those are 2 unfortunately different things. But this is something I'll take back and we'll discuss, and to make sure, we're not, doubling or tripling efforts. That, I wouldn't want to do that. But there are 2 very different goals there, unfortunately. But we'll bring it up next time we talk with Blaine. Absolutely.
Let me know if this question is premature, but I'm getting it on record anyway. Do we know how we're going to handle the fractured rock areas that are not coherent, distinct basins, but where it's very complex and there are differential situations over narrow areas of territory? If that's not an issue for the prototype, when will we catch it and when will we essentially figure out how we're handling it?
So we'll be reporting out on demand based on land use types. So if we're in an area that's unmanaged, in an unmanaged basin area, outside of a community, I think so like what you're discussing, fractured rock areas, they're going to show up as agriculture or as rural users, based on land use calculations. And so as far as like a specific, if say Adelaida gets to a point where we have a safe yield noted or reported, studied, vetted, approved, accepted, then perhaps we could study it or explain it and report it differently. But right now, those we'll be reporting on what's being used there, and if it's being used, then there is supply for that use. But does that mean it's going to be that way 30 years from now? We don't really know in these areas, like you've said, and that's why we're doing the study we're doing. But whatever information is available, we're trying to include here.
Sounds like we're sort of backing into supply and demand equations, just measuring supply, but without with just measuring the demand that is currently being supplied.
For rural areas that are completely isolated from systems, I mean there's less options, and in most cases a lot less data available. But if you have other ideas, I'd be glad to.
Well, obviously, we have a process going on for the Adelaide area, and perhaps it could be a model for the other areas. And the data gathered there could certainly be in the report, but I'll leave it for future phases, but comment noted, right?
Yes, sir.
Christine.
Yes, just a general comment, not in depth, but for some of us who have been around with this committee for 20 or 30 years, at 40, I remember a master water plan being prepared. We would talk about things and it was all on paper. And the technology is a wonderful thing, because I see there is the opportunity for more information to be more greatly available to many, many more people. And we don't have everything we want yet, or know how it's all going to work out yet, but the ability to produce this kind of a report is just light years ahead of what we've been able to do in the past. So I'm encouraged that this has tremendous opportunities for us.
So, yeah, back to the earlier chart with the pie charts on the bottom. How do you define supply, in the sense that, let's say, hypothetically, the Morro Bay example, the city of Morro Bay had 500 acre-feet of allocation from the state water project that year, but only used 200 for 2020. Would you count 200 as a supply or 500? Because, that interests me, because that sort of helps educate people about whether or not you're really in surplus or deficit. So what do you call your historical supplies? What they actually used or what they could have used?
That's a good question. You hit a numbers question in a philosophical question. Andy, do you know, I don't know specifically. I think we're using the allocation because that's the supply,
right?
From a planning standpoint. But I thought I'll double check with the Corolla team.
So. And then the follow-up would be, okay, but you use the 500, but they only use 200. So they really have a 300 surplus, at least from that one source. So perhaps the pie charts could be modified to show a little wedge on either supply or demand where you're either have a surplus that year or you're in deficit, because right now the pie charts just show, well, it looks like it's like we used exactly what we had and not a drop more, not a drop less. It's begging the question of like
maybe an available versus
there needs to be
supply.
So there is, that does get into a couple of years ago we did our regional water infrastructure resiliency plan, and we got into the what's available versus what's being used. And so I do think we are going to touch on that specific question. But I can't tell you exactly how we're going to do that, but we are, that was done in 2020 and 21. And we are putting, when it says risk scores, that whole infrastructure resiliency analysis is getting put into this master water report. So I could see us being able to do that. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to confirm, yeah, what I was showing on the pie charts was a very simple high level view on just some of the data that we've got to summarize the Morro Bay watershed. But clearly we are calculating supplies, we are calculating demand separately, and where there's a mismatch, surplus or deficit, then we would obviously show that as well. It all depends on what level and where the information is coming from, and it really is a mixed bag of information. And what we're trying to do is to normalize that so we can kind of do those proper comparisons. And there's much more that we're going to go and do in that sense in the development version. There'll be more reports, more of those comparisons, and it will become a bit more apparent probably the next time we demo the application, where you can start to see some of these comparable numbers. But the source data is complicated, that's for sure. Elisa, do you want to add to that?
Oops, sorry. I think that's a good explanation, Andy. And to the point of where you do see where there's surplus, it would be in that comparison of the supply and demand, the surplus that you were talking about. The person who asked that question.
Thank you.
All right, we got Greg and then David. And
okay, real quick on the surplus on the state water. It's not counting 2023 because we got 100%, even though it's sitting somewhere else. 16 years prior to that, the state delivered 23.5% of what they were supposed to deliver. And if the South County purveyors need 4,730 and they pay for 10,000 and something, and somehow their water was made up by the rest of the taxpayers that bought the other 15,000 acre feet that was stored, which is 42,000 acre feet of water that's never been recovered for the rest of the taxpayers that paid for it. So to me, when you're taking somebody else's supply and using it to backfill what the state doesn't deliver, that's an important issue, because that's over $11 million worth of water.
Yeah, I was just wondering, just going back to what I was talking about before, wouldn't it be relatively simple for the database to have basin safe yield, which is known for every basin, and where we were in terms of basin safe yield? That seems to be a very simple thing.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about total basin supply, the hell, the groundwater is the dominant one in many of these basins. So basin safe yield seem to be a necessary.
Oh, absolutely. The track
totally.
At 5 different well locations is it's completely different for a specific basin. But what basin annual safe yield is one of the most fundamental metrics of water supply that we have. So I would expect absolutely, we get supply source summaries. We're going to be able to see that data and reference like oh, it's from this report, or it's in this GSP, or it's in this, as noted in the 2023 Coastal Basin Management Committee annual report, or whatever that document is for that specific basin. But yeah, that is a foundational data point. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Linda.
I'd like to suggest that in the past when the National Water,
Sorry, Linda, can you speak up just a little?
okay.
Thank you.
When the county on starting to do master water reports, there were public workshops and meetings to bring the public in to talk about what was needed and how it was going. And I don't believe there have been any public workshops with this update on master water report. And this is so different than what we have dealt with in the past. And there's certainly new projects or programs like Sigma that it would be, before you get too far along, I would suggest that you consider doing public workshops and using your phase 1 as a test run and having a way to get more input from the public in terms of how it might be used or what they find not hitting the spot that they want or whatever. But I would strongly encourage that there be more public participation in this.
Thank you.
And I know that's messy.
I was just gonna, so.
I have a lot of messy here behind it.
So, and in thinking, Linda and others, just kind of following up on that, thinking of the sequencing that Brendan has laid out there, it seems, I mean, even just within this group, we're already like, you know, data numbers, we're just trying to grab onto those. Do you think that that we wait until that kind of the sample 1 is pretty well accomplished so that we can get feedback? Or do you think it needs to be an earlier or a specific group to solicit? I just want to make sure that we don't, one, ask them to do something that's going to spin wheels or be counterproductive in trust building. You know what I mean? It's a messy process, and I appreciate the transparency of being able to see the iterations as we go. But I just want to make sure that we're understanding where you think or anybody, where we think the community involvement is, a broader community input would be most helpful.
Well, you're already getting input from this body.
Right.
And we're only one body. And so if you wait too long, there will be a point at which you'll say, well, we don't want to go back and completely rewrite it, or whatever it is. The sooner it is better in my mind.
Yeah, good.
This is what you wanted to hear, right?
Well, it's also, I mean, it's also possible to think of having a, you know, maybe next time it comes to RAC, have a broader outreach with a focus that this is kind of a community workshop type of format. I know we had talked about doing that at one of the earlier ones and ended up just, you know, doing a similar level of presentation, which is great for our group. But I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I think I'm going to preface this by saying I'm still a little bummed that John's not here. So I'm a little on edge about that. So sorry if I've been a little, I think, so I think
I can jump in too if you want.
I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna try. I think there's been I think we've done, I mean, I've been coming here twice a year. This is our 4th RAC, you know, discussion. You know, like what we saw today, I saw for the first time less than a month ago. So this fairly quick and we're out here. This is definitely, in my opinion, the venue to be vetting and reviewing this project. And I think we've been keeping you informed. Now, that being said, a big outreach to the public, this is what's going on. And we want your feedback, a broader scope, maybe a specific workshop. I think that could be in order and would be appropriate, I think, when we have the first run of analysis and reports, to really something more tangible to look at and review. So I think that perhaps the next year we get our grant deliverable in and we're planning expanding to the rest of the county. I've been calling that kind of a regroup for the project team. So that summer, it could be, all right, before we're going to go and kick off and expand to the rest of the county, we're going to do a dedicated, not a 20-minute presentation, but go through in a little more detail, and really get out, to the public. I could see us doing something like that. So I'm agreeing and disagreeing with you, but I think we could do something like that, and I think next year could be a good point for that when we have sample reports and analysis, not just functionality. Is that, yeah?
Well, I can remember public meetings where there were, CSDs were coming, cities were coming, they were all sending their water people who have lots of information or lots of ideas. And even the private sector was coming from a variety of different water purveyors, people that are consultants in the county and work in water. There were all kinds of different people coming to the meetings. So you were getting a really good cross section of people that work with water out in the public. And that to me brings a value that might be beneficial.
Yeah.
I like the idea of that next round, that there's a point where it really is appropriate for a robust presentation. And I could almost picture like when we did the legal findings or the legal analysis for groundwater, where we had it in the county government center, and it was a RAC meeting, but it was only on that topic and in a a larger setting.
It's like hosted by RAC.
Right, it was hosted by RAC, but it really did do a good job of we had a flyer and we put the word out in a way. And again, I mean, these meetings are open, lots of people are on the distribution list. So I think if there was, folks who were, the potential to participate has been available for a long time, as you know. But yeah, to be able to kind of make it splashy for the broader public and leaders, I think would be terrific. Like, hey, here's our presentation plan.
I agree.
Great, last one.
What would be useful in terms of that is getting a sort of box chart of who you would ask for what. For example, Ed over there would know anything you wanted to know about the Nipomo groundwater basin. So, or somebody like Ed, who would be responsible for a certain amount of data to be input at a certain time into the people who are integrating the model. And if you work out how many little boxes, how many people or groups you have to ask for critical data, and then with Linda, you come with this list and say, are you there? Are you missing? Do you want to add something? And then once you've got your data streams worked out, you know how much you have to integrate. But it seems to me that hasn't quite happened yet. It looks a bit like Bulletin 118, to tell you the truth at the moment. In terms of the amount of data that's being looked at, very vague stuff. That's not particularly impressive at this stage. But
good. All right. Any other comments? Online, I know half of your staff folks online, consultants, any comments there? Thank you. I mean, you have to have enough substance in order to excite us to be able to start digging into the details, right? So
yeah, we got excited today.
Yeah. So that's the good stuff. It's super powerful. Thank you to our team. I think as Christine noted, it's going to be great. There's just like really good information. And as we talked about at our last meeting, when we talked about housing infrastructure planning and all of those pieces. So I've continued to say all year that this is kind of the most important thing we have going right now across our county is this water report. So yeah, so we have, I think we're going to call it that. We just don't have a Don Lindsay here. We are.
You can't figure out the weather anymore than we did.
Yeah, we're about and there's history that we've been really working to try to get this. So yes, so we're bummed on that. I'm going to take off and let Tom finish up the we have at-large applications to go over, the ongoing updates, future agenda items, and just a heads up, we don't have a January meeting. Right, that's our plan. So for folks on Zoom that are staying on Zoom, Joey will be able to still go ahead and lift your hand, raise your hand if you want to be called on or have a comment. So
thank you.
Tom, thank you.
All right, so move along now to item 5, which is considered to endorsing 1, 2, or 3 people for the agriculture member at large and the 2 alternates. So I think Brendan, you said Patricia is not here. We're looking at the applications of Patricia Wilmore, Mary Van Ryn, and Jason Yeager. I think Patricia did provide Brendan with a statement because she could not be here today. So I'm going to ask him to read that, and then Mary and Jason, I don't know, is Jason, are you here today? Oh, very in the back, very good. Can each speak to their application, and then we'll open it for discussion. Go ahead.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so just one note would be the role of the committee in the at-large application process is kind of giving what the verb will use is endorsement to that this person applying fits the intention of this at-large spot. So taking the, well, Brendan just decided that works, that person's in ag, okay. Taking that out and saying, yes, we all reviewed it, this application fits the intention of, for agriculture, environmental, and development at large. So that's the role here of the committee, and we'll take a vote, hopefully, to endorse the applications here when we're done. So yeah, Patricia unfortunately couldn't be here. She had a conflicting event, but she did send a little introduction, so I'll read it.
Before you do that, I'm sorry, one other thing. In your agenda packet for today, there are the redacted applications of all 3 applicants, so you can be reviewing those as well.
Great. All right, from Patricia. I have been attending RAC meetings as a non-voting participant since 2013. So for over 10 years. During that time, I have come to appreciate the contribution that the RAC makes to understanding and weighing in on the county's water policy. I have at the same time been closely involved with the groundwater sustainability plan for the Paso Basin, as well as the technical advisory committee analyzing a multi-benefit land use repurposing program, Miller. Our organization was also a collaborator with the county in pursuing a grant from the State Department of Conservation for the Miller program. The Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance has nearly 500 members, which includes growers, wineries, distilleries, and many other ancillary businesses that promote and nurture agriculture in the county. The success of these businesses is key to continued economic viability of agriculture in the county and clearly depends on a continued reliable source of water, as well as the sustainability of that water supply. Our members are committed to using water more efficiently and to looking at creative and sustainable ways to improve supply and sustainability. My role at the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance also keeps me in communication with our elected representatives at the local, state, federal level, which includes exploring ways to address challenges in water policy.
Thanks, Patricia. Thank you. Mary, would you like to go next?
Sure.
From there if you want, or you can just
speak up a little bit,
whatever you prefer.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mary Ann Ryan, and of course, I always prepare something, but I just want to speak to you a little bit about my background. When I turned in my application, I didn't send in a fancy resume or anything. I currently, for the past 5 years, have worked for the Institute for Environmental Health, and within that project or that company, I've worked on quite a few water projects, including wash line validations in the post-harvest environment in the crop side. And then as well as notes here, so I don't lose something. Hold on. Surface water treatment down in the desert. So I've worked with groundwater for a long time, both working in agriculture down in Guadalupe. I worked as a QA director down there, and I ran their food safety and quality program, and I spent a lot of time in the field. I have traveled across the country, down in Mexico, all over the place, auditing farming operations for many years. Privately, we live in Nipomo on 3 acres with a private well. So we have been dealing with just the groundwater management in the Nipomo Basin. We also own a share in a community well. But really, I'm not here for me personally. I'm here from my professional background. On top of having worked in seed business and the produce business, I'm also teaching a post-harvest class at Cal Poly. So the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity on going on field trips with the kids after COVID, taking them to farming operations around the county. And this coming spring, I will be doing the same thing again. My hope to you is to bring some wisdom and knowledge about farming, you know, an agricultural side, and my knowledge about water quality in general. I have a lot of background in reading reports on pesticide residual testing, water reports of all sorts, just through the many years of being in ag. So I'm hoping I can just bring some wisdom to this committee, and especially the South County. I definitely am very concerned about the water down there, and anybody who's been in Nipomo for a long time should be as well. So thank you. That's pretty much my summary of my time here. I have been here since 1985.
Very good. Thank you.
Are there questions, you guys?
Any questions for Mary?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Jason, you can do from there, or please come, please, whatever works for you.
Yeah, that's fine for me. My name is Jason Yeager. I've been a resident for 23 years since 2011. First with my wine estates, and starting my own vineyard management company a few years back, and now as a partner and general manager of Farmhouse Global. So also a previous member of this group here from 2014-18. I was also a board member and chair of the Pastoral Wine Country Alliance, as well as a co-founder and a previous director of the Pastoral Technical Group, and also a previous advisory committee to YLI, which is a culture conference being passed. So lots of experience in ag. Previously, I was born and raised. I was born and raised in Napa, and so I got my start. Grandfather's little 15-acre farm there, and farm beans there for about 15 years before around 2011.
Thank you. Any questions for Jason? All right, and we'll move on. I'll entertain a motion in a second. First, I would just point out, having discussed it with Brendan and Andy, that hopefully we'll get a motion that will indicate who would be the member and the 2 alternates, assuming that all 3 are qualified, which at least personally I think they are, and meet the qualifications for agricultural member at large. But if we can't reach some sort of consensus, we'll probably, the default would be, we would recommend the member for the person who first applied, which would be Patricia, and the alternates would be Mary and Jason, again, assuming all three are qualified. But if there are differing opinions, we welcome that. And so at this point, I would entertain a motion.
I got a question before we get to the motion.
All right.
And I'm going to use 2 examples. I don't have anything against anybody. I prefer somebody that's actually been an agriculturalist than a person that's been a paid consultant in agriculture that's basically speaking for certain special interest groups that doesn't look at the whole basin for all the constituents that live over the basin, but is more concerned with certain groups. As a representative of the Cattlemen's Association, I own a cattle ranch. I work in the cattle business. I've never been paid by the Cattlemen's Association to come to represent them. Just because I went to Albertsons and looked in the beef section doesn't mean I know anything about beef. On the technical advisory committees, there's 3 committees. I'm on the expanded monitoring committee. And out of those 3 committees, there's 23 people. There's only 3 representatives from the community on one committee. The other 2 committees are specifically made up, and the rest of the people on our committee are specifically made up by 2 special interest groups. I think there's a certain point in time with 40 representatives here and everybody's agency looking out for certain things that, and it was brought up that why aren't other people here? Well, other people are at work. So I think it's would be more intuitive to have somebody that's not just special interest, but is looking out, that's involved in that particular type of, whether you're ag at large or environmental at large or Cattlemen's Association, whatever your group is. I represent all the cattlemen as the organization. I don't just represent myself, and I'm actually in the business. So I am not, and I don't have anything against anybody that wanted to apply for the business. I've never felt like I had to be a non-voting member or a voting member. I've always felt welcome at the RAC. I've been a member of the RAC for a long time. I was on the water resource, I was on the advisories for the Pasco Basin. I've been to every LAPCO meeting that deals with water. I've been to every supervisor's meeting that deals with water. I've been to the Superior Court in San Jose that deals with the court case 32 times, between 10 Zoom meetings. I've been to Sacramento and met with the Deputy Director of the Department of Water Resources. So I've spent a lot of personal time at my own expense to show up to all these things. And I haven't been paid to come here and then say I want to be on the committee because it's convenient, because I'm being paid.
Okay,
so that's my 2 cents.
I see.
What are you referring to?
Patricia Wilmore.
Because I'm not a consultant.
Thank you, Greg. All right. Christine, were you? I think you were next.
I'm ready to make a motion unless there are other questions and
yes
behind there. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to make a suggestion that since we have 2 voting members and we already have one that represents the North County, that I was going to suggest that Mary would be the member, not the alternate.
Go ahead, Christine.
Then
okay.
I will move that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors that Mary Van Ryn be the Ag at Large member, and the 2 others, Jason and Patricia, will be alternates.
Okay. Is there a second to Christine's motion?
I second.
Second. Very good.
Can I ask for a friendly amendment? Should we decide who the superior alternate is, or the primary alternate versus the secondary alternate?
There's 2 member spots, so
yeah,
each be an alternate to a member.
Right. There's 2 ag at large. One is filled, so they'll be equal.
Aware of that.
Okay, no problem. No problem. All right. We do have a motion and a second discussion. David.
Yes, speak to the motion. I would disagree with this. They're excellent, by the way, all 3. But I like Patricia because she had experience not only with the Vineyard Alliance, but also she's been active on the groundwater committees up there. So she knows the arguments. Whereas the other Vineyard person is interested in his qualifications for essentially vineyard management, with no indication of being involved in groundwater things. But I would rank him second after Patricia, so my order would be different.
I see.
Sorry, Mary, I didn't.
Okay. We still have a motion on the floor. Any other comments? We can vote on Christine's motion. I think some parliamentary advice. I guess, yes, if we call for the question, then we can vote. If it passes, we're done. If it fails, then we can seek a second one. So we heard a call for the question.
Do we need to verify everyone is a voting member first?
We had a quorum, and Andy left
before you came in.
Yeah. Yes. So do we want to do a show of hands, or do you want to
I think maybe we'll call everyone out.
Why don't you want to call the roll? Okay.
All right.
Would you repeat the motion?
The motion by Christine and seconded by Steve was that Mary Van Ryn would be endorsed by the committee as the member, and that Jason and Patricia would be alternates. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. So Tom.
Aye.
Alan. Aye. John Winston.
Aye.
Christine Mulholland.
Yes.
Eric Greeny. Oh, he bounced. Okay. Sorry. David Chipping.
Nay.
Linda Chipping.
Yes.
Jamie Hendrickson.
Yes.
Steve Carter.
Yes.
Steve Sinton. Lee Nesbitt.
Yes.
Clint Werrick.
Yes.
Laurel Barton.
Yes.
Stacy Inman.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Andy absent. Scott Duffield.
Can you mark me in?
You are here.
Tim Walters.
And
I'm a yes also.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Sorry about that.
No problem. Came late.
Scott Duffield.
Yes.
Ed Eby.
Yes.
Kelly Dodds.
Yes.
And Deborah Logan. She is, oh, there she is.
Yes.
Okay. Did I miss a member presence? I don't think so. Okay. All right, so then that passes.
We said sufficient for a quorum, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we did have a quorum and it passed. Very good. All right, we'll move on then to ongoing updates.
I have one.
Sir, yes.
So if I understand correctly, Mary's going to fill the member role, but the other 2 alternates are going to be here on their representing the 2 different members. Is that correct?
Yes.
In other words, the alternates may or may not show up, but they would be split between the 2.
Yes.
Folks.
Yeah, we'll assign each alternate to a member. Yeah. And if the member's absent, then the alternate would vote in the member's place.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. And that'll be probably at the Board of Supervisors.
Before the February meeting.
Before the February meeting. Right. Very good. Any other questions or thoughts on that before we moved on to the next agenda item? All right, seeing none. Ongoing updates, I'll just read them down in order. If anybody has any comments or thoughts, just give a shout out. Rain and reservoir report, drought updates, groundwater basin management efforts.
I have a question on the management or basin management efforts.
Yes, Greg.
So we've been waiting for over 5 months. Again, I'm on the expanded monitoring wells. Right off the bat, we started in March. We identified the wells, we identified the people, we identified the shallow well problem. We've had the money for 1.5 years. And I don't know why we're sitting around and don't have wells monitoring already being done. We haven't done the outreach yet, which we should have done. And so we've been sitting on our hands for 5 months. That's my update for the basin management. They're worried about blended water, which they have no infrastructure to use. Instead of worrying about monitoring what we already know exists and where the issues are. So, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And Brendan, if you could pass that comment back to the staff.
Sure.
All right. Integrated regional water management master water report update, which we saw earlier. State water project, desalination, various county water programs, and lastly, open reporting on water conservation opportunities information. Any comments by people in the room or on online? All right, so hearing none, we'll go to future agenda items. Anybody have any suggested future agenda items?
John, where was he from?
We will follow up and see what happened to John. Hopefully nothing bad for him. Hearing no, in addition to that, public comment for items not on the agenda. Any comments? All right. In that case, then I will adjourn the meeting. Everybody, please have a safe and happy holiday season. We'll see you in February.
Thank you.
I haven't